April 1945. The Third Reich was dying. Germany was collapsing into smoke, rubble, and fear. Allied armies were closing in from every direction, and the promises that had sustained the nation for 12 years were falling apart just as quickly as its cities. Among the chaos were thousands of German women wearing Wehrmacht auxiliary uniforms, clerks, nurses, radio operators, non-combatants who had still been absorbed into the machinery of war. They had been told they were serving their country. Now they were trapped between retreating German units and advancing enemy armies. Among them were 3 women. Helga Schneider was 22 years old, from Hamburg, a city already reduced to ruins by Allied bombing. For 2 years she had worked as a signals auxiliary, tapping Morse code keys in dark rooms lit by candles. Her hands were rough from metal switches, her eyes burned from reading coded messages late into the night. 3 weeks earlier, her commanding officer had gathered the women in a basement. His voice trembled as he handed each of them a small glass capsule. "Cyanide. If the Canadians capture you," he said, "use this. Death is better than what they will do to you." Helga sewed the capsule into the hem of her coat. She touched it whenever fear overwhelmed her, which was now constant. Margaret Fisher was 35, a trained nurse from Munich. For 8 years, she had tended to wounded men returning from the front. Some whispered things they didn't want remembered, stories from the East, orders they had followed, villages burned. Others spoke of Allied troops, claiming Americans, British, and Canadians showed no mercy. Margaret didn't know what to believe anymore. She only knew she was afraid. Anneliese Hoffmann was just 19. She had grown up on a farm in East Prussia when the Red Army advanced. Her family sent her west, believing surrender to the British or Canadians was the lesser evil. She fled with thousands of others, carrying only a ring from her grandmother, a photograph of her parents, and money that was now worthless. She had been told the enemy would strip her, beat her, and starve her. On April 28, 1945, near Bremen, all 3 women stood with their hands raised as British and Canadian soldiers moved in, calling for surrender. Helga waited for gunfire. It never came. "The enemy does nothing." A young British sergeant stepped forward. Mud clung to his boots. His face was tired. In German, he said words Helga would remember for the rest of her life. "The war is over for you. You are safe now. Safe." That word made no sense. They were not beaten, not screamed at, not separated violently. They were told to gather their belongings and prepare to move. Canadian guards handed out water, real water, in metal canteens. One helped an elderly woman down from a truck because her knees had locked. Helga kept her hand near the cyanide capsule. Nothing happened. They were loaded onto covered military trucks, not cattle cars, and driven west. When a frightened teenage girl began screaming, a British corporal spoke to her softly until she calmed. No one was hit. At the port, the women saw mountains of Red Cross supplies stacked higher than buildings. Food, medicine, blankets. There were no cameras, no speeches, just workers loading crates. The crossing to England took 14 hours. The women expected to be locked in the ship's hold. Instead, they were given bunks, blankets, hot food. Some refused to eat, convinced it was poisoned. Helga watched the sailors eat the same stew. She took one bite and wrote in her diary that night, "They feed their prisoners better than we fed our own soldiers. Canada is not real." From England, the women crossed the Atlantic. 7 days at sea. They were fed 3 meals a day, allowed on deck. Spoken to politely, a French-Canadian guard taught them English phrases. "You'll need this in Canada," he said, smiling. On May 17, 1945, the train arrived in Gravenhurst, Ontario. The women pressed their faces to the windows. The town was intact. No rubble, no bomb craters, clean streets, children playing, shops full. "This is fake," Anneliese whispered. "They prepared this for us." But the illusion didn't end. Farms stretched for kilometers, painted houses, full barns, healthy animals. Camp 20 stood in the forest, wooden barracks, real windows, glass beds with mattresses, running water. Helga turned on a tap and watched clean water flow. She began to cry her eyes on orders, not slaves. The next morning, a Canadian officer addressed them. Major Patricia Wilson, a woman. She explained the rules. Work was voluntary, medical care provided, education offered, letters allowed. "You are prisoners," she said, "not slaves." Work assignments followed: farms, factories, camp duties. Margaret worked on a farm. The farmer's wife invited prisoners to eat at her family table. Roasted chicken, butter, milk, apple pie. "My son is fighting in Europe," the woman said. "I pray someone shows him kindness." Margaret wept as she ate. Helga discovered electric washing machines in the camp laundry. Anneliese counted 47 products in a grocery store. The propaganda was collapsing. The Saturday breakfast, September 15, 1945. A special breakfast was announced. The dining hall had tablecloths, proper dishes. The smell stopped them cold. Real pancakes, thick golden bacon, butter and maple syrup. Sergeant Mueller placed bottles on each table. "Canadian maple syrup," he said. "From trees here, 40 liters of sap for 1 liter of syrup today. Girls, it's yours." Anneliese tasted it first. She began to cry. Then Helga, then Margaret. Soon 143 German women were sobbing, not from fear, but from truth. This was proof the enemy they were taught to hate had abundance and shared it. No cameras, no propaganda, just pancakes. After the dam broke, nothing was the same after that. Education classes filled. Letters home changed. Some resisted, some broke. Films from concentration camps were shown. Beliefs collapsed. Repatriation came in 1946. Germany was ruins. Starving people, broken cities. Canada had been real. The lies had not. The long echo lives diverged. Marriages, teaching, immigration. Children a jar of maple syrup traveled back to Germany. Decades later, a reunion recreated the breakfast, pancakes again, tears again, and one truth remained. You can defeat an enemy without becoming one. Final word, Helga said it best. Kindness is not weakness, it is strength. And sometimes, it tastes like maple syrup.